Isaiah chapter 1. We'll begin with verse 10. John, did you push the button this morning?
Yes, I did.
Isaiah chapter 1, begin with verse 10. It says, "Hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the law of our God, you people of Gomorrah. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices to me, says the Lord? I have had enough of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of cattle. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats. When you come to appear before me, who has required this from your hand to trample my courts? Bring no more futile sacrifices. Incense is an abomination to me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, and the calling of assemblies, I cannot endure iniquity in the sacred meeting. Your new moons and your appointed feasts my soul hates. They are a trouble to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands, I'll hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Put away your evil doings from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rebuke the oppressor. Defend the fatherless. Plead for the widow. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat to the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword. The mouth of the Lord has spoken." Let's go ahead and go to our Lord. Our Father, as we come in the name of Christ, we just ask you to be with us. We look upon your word. Lord, pray that you'll guide us. Lord, direct us. Lord, be able to take this and apply it to our lives. Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen. As Isaiah is speaking here, he begins to talk about some things. He begins by comparing them to Sodom and Gomorrah. Now that's an interesting comparison as you begin to think about it. These guys think that they're okay. Now that's important to remember. The audience that Isaiah is speaking to, they think they're fine. They think they have a good relationship with God. They think everything is just perfect. And they think that the life that they're living, there's no problem with it. They think the things that are going on, there's no problem with it. They're going through all the motions and everything is just perfect in their mind. So Isaiah comes up and he calls them rulers of Sodom and people of Gomorrah. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, by the way? God destroyed them. God judged them. God took and removed them from the face of the earth. And we can look at that and we can talk about the things that were going on in Sodom and Gomorrah and all the evil that was going on in those cities. But it comes down to one very important aspect. They disobeyed God. They disobeyed what God said. And even whenever he was there, they didn't listen to him. In the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he even took them captive. And yet they didn't turn to God. So they're just going about their lives thinking everything is fine. They're accepting everything. That's the other aspect of things. Well, we need to be tolerant. We need to accept everything. It's interesting how they accept everything except Christianity, by the way. And that's one of the things that's going on there. So he calls up the rulers of Sodom and the rulers of Gomorrah. And basically what he is telling the people here is, so you're religious. So you go and you do all these things. You are disobedient to what God has to say. You're disobedient to what he wants. And you're just going about your daily lives. I like what he comes on into verse 11, and he says, "To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices to me? What good are they?" God says he'd rather have obedience than sacrifice. He'd rather have somebody following him than sacrifice. Well, here they're going through the motions of religion. They're going through the motions of it. And that's all they're doing. And I want you to keep in mind something. These are good people as far as some people would look at. They were doing what they should be doing. They were going to church as they should be going to church. They were bringing the sacrifices as they were required to bring the sacrifices. They were going through all the motions of religion, but they didn't have the one thing that was important in their religion. They did not have Jesus Christ. They were not following God. They were following a set of rules and regulations. You know, back in Missouri, there was a movement to try to get the Ten Commandments posted in every place that they could think about posting them. And they came to me and asked me to help get the Ten Commandments posted in all these places. And I said, well, I'd rather post John 3:16. And I'd rather post John 14:6. And I'd rather post 1 John chapter 1 and 1 John chapter 3 than the Ten Commandments. If you want to post about the love of God, I'll be willing to help you with these things. And they looked at me and they said, no, we need to let people know what they need to do and what they need not to do. We need to let people know that Jesus Christ loves them. Amen. We need to let people know that God is there and God has given to us His Son. And we don't have all the rules and all the regulations and all the things that have to go along with it. I'm not saying there's something wrong with the Ten Commandments, because the book of Galatians says the law is our schoolmaster to point us to who? Jesus Christ. The law lets us know we can't keep it. Paul, as he writes about himself, he says, according to the law, he is blameless. You know, I like Paul, and I like a lot of the things he does. And you know, if you talk about heroes, Paul would be one of my heroes. But I think he lied at that particular point. I'm just saying, none of us can keep the whole law. None of us can be blameless on the law. But Paul, as he writes that, he thought he was. And these Pharisees and these people that Isaiah is speaking to, they think they're okay because they're doing everything they're supposed to do. They were doing all the do's. They were not doing all the don'ts. And they were going through all these things. And God says, what purpose is it? Excuse me. In verse 11, it says, I have had enough. I like that. I've had enough of the burnt offerings. I've had enough of them. I've had enough of the fat of the cattle. I do not delight in the blood of goats or the lambs or goats. I want you to real quickly, as think about it, turn over to Matthew chapter 23 for just a moment. God is saying to the people here, I've had enough of these things. I've had enough of all the things that you're doing and all the sacrifices that you're doing. It goes on to talk about how he is weary of bearing them and weary of doing the things. In Matthew chapter 23, Christ is speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees. And I just want to pick out one verse, and you can see this over and over and over and over again in Matthew chapter 23, verse 11. And he goes on down through here, he says this, verse 13, but woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. Goes all the way through that chapter, saying the same thing. He gives various things that are doing wrong. But I want you to notice, the Pharisees were doing everything right in their mind. They were doing everything God required them to do in their mind. They were just like Paul, as he said, according to the law, I'm blameless. I'm a good person. And God here in Isaiah is saying, I am tired of these things. I am weary of these things. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. In verse 12 he says, when you come to appear before me, who required this from your hand? Who said you had to do this? Now we know that God says that we shouldn't forsake the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is. And I was talking about Charlena, how she's excited to be able to to go to church and to be in a church fellowship this morning. But let me tell you something. Coming to church doesn't save a single person. Being in church every single Sunday doesn't save a single person. Alexa was baptized here just a little while ago. That doesn't save a single person. You can be baptized in every church that you want to be baptized in. You can be a member of every church that you can possibly be a member of. You can attend every service that is available, and you can even make up some services to go to. You can be so busy in the church and doing good things in the church that you forget about God. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, who's required this of your hand? Who's told you you had to come? Who told you you had to do all these sacrifices? Yes, it's in the law. Yes, he talks about them. Yes, he gives all these different sacrifices that they're supposed to be doing. But what's the purpose behind it? The purpose is to realize how important God is. How we are dependent upon him. Verse 12, he says, when you appear before me, who's required this at your hand to trample my courts? I like that phrase, by the way, to trample my courts. They're not welcome. You notice that? Why are they not welcome? I've looked at that and thought about that for a while. Why are they not welcome to come into God's courts? It's because they don't know him. It's because they don't have a relationship with him. It's because they're coming there and they are saying something like this: I'm pretty good. These 6 things does the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. And the first one on that list is pride. I'm all right. I'm doing pretty well. Bring no more futile sacrifices. Solomon puts it this way: vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Because without Jesus Christ, without God, without following him, everything is useless. You could do all the good things in the world, and it's still useless. Incense is an abomination to me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity in the sacred meeting. Now, I've known people take this particular verse out of context, and they'll say, see, we shouldn't burn incense. The Bible says so. That's not what he's saying. He is saying you bring this before me, and you're supposedly praying, and you're supposedly praying to God, and you're saying something like this: Lord, I'm so wonderful. Just like in the New Testament, we have the Pharisee that comes to pray, and we have the publican that comes to pray. Not a Republican, Republican. And the Pharisee prays, says he prays with himself, by the way. I like that phrase, but it says this: Lord, I'm glad I'm not like this other man. I sacrifice, I tithe, I attend, and he goes on about how wonderful he is. That's what he's saying. He's saying that's not prayer. That's not talking to God. That's just like that Pharisee prayed thus with himself. I like that prayer. But then the publican says this: Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. That man's prayer was heard according to Christ. The new moons, the Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies. I cannot endure iniquity and the sacred meeting. I cannot endure iniquity and the sacred meeting. Talking about where we're at. New moons, appointed feast. My soul hates. That's a pretty strong word for God. It's a pretty strong word for God to say, my soul hates this. My soul hates all this stuff going on in the name of God. And God is not there. My soul hates all these sacred meetings and all these sacrifices and all these things talking about how great he is or how wonderful he is, but really talking about how great I am and how wonderful I am. And talking about all the other ways of getting to heaven rather than through Jesus Christ. And all the other things that go along with that. He says, you know, my soul hates these things because of the iniquity. Yes, we're sinners. We all are. Each one of us, in our own way, in our own things, we all are sinners. But we all know that we need Jesus Christ. When you spread out your hands, I'll hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. What is the prayer God promises to hear? It's the same prayer that the thief on the cross prayed. It was the same prayer that Paul prayed. Same prayer that many others have prayed. Where it's, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. Or the man on the cross who said, Lord, remember me when you enter into your kingdom. And before that, he confessed that he was there for righteously. He had done some things. So it's not the fact that they've done so many bad things that God won't hear them. Excuse me. It's the fact that they refused to admit that. It's the fact that they refuse to admit that they need God. They need Him. But God doesn't leave it there. I like that. I like that God doesn't just say to them, as He says in Matthew chapter 23, woe unto you scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. I like it that God doesn't just say, for the wages of sin is death. I like it that God doesn't just say to them here, I'm tired of all this stuff. You know, I'm tired of the hypocrisy that goes with it. I'm tired of the emptiness behind it. You're just going through the motions of it. God gives an answer to them. God says there's a way to fix this. There's a way to make it right. There's a way to come before God that God desires and that God wants. And that's what He begins to talk about as we begin to look at these next few verses, as He begins to talk about some things. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Christ. Why do your disciples eat with unwashed hands? Now, it wasn't that they didn't wash their hands, per se. It was they didn't go through the ritual of washing their hands and how they were supposed to wash their hands and how they were supposed to let the water run off and drip off the elbows and the things of that nature. So, you know, they had all these rituals about how they're supposed to do things. So they could say, well, we wash our hands. That's not what it means. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Peter is there with Christ. Christ is coming along and washing their feet. And Peter says, Lord, not me. Don't wash my feet. And Christ says, you know, if I don't wash your feet, you don't have any part of me. Peter makes this statement, well, Lord, not my feet only, my hands, my head, everything. I want to be clean. Now, Christ goes on to talk about some things there, but that's the attitude that we should be having. God, I want to be clean in you. I want to have my whole self clean in you. And that's what Peter was desiring. Now, Christ told him some things there. You're already clean. You know, just your feet. But the thing of it is we need that attitude. We need the attitude that Peter had. I want to be clean in Jesus Christ. I like what he says as he goes on into verse 16. Put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes. I like that verse. There's a lot of reasons I like that verse. I was talking to a person here a while back. They claimed he's trying to quit something. I was in the grocery store with him. He's claiming they was trying to quit something. Well, what were they doing? They were buying it and putting it in their cart. You know, it doesn't look to me like you're trying to quit too well. You see, not gather evil things, Not to put them in our houses or in our homes or things of that nature, but to get rid of them. I remember a guy one time back in Missouri. He called me to come to his house. He had some things that he wanted to get rid of because he had accepted Christ, and he wanted to get rid of these things that he had in his house. And he said, bring a pickup truck. So I brought a pickup truck, and he started carrying out Playboy magazines and just loading the back of that pickup truck up with all these magazines. It's like, okay, now what am I supposed to do with them? They burned really well in the church furnace. Get rid of the evil things. That's what he's saying. There's a lady on the Navajo Nation. She had this beautiful rug on the wall. I mean, if you could call what I was doing coveting, you could say that, because I look at that rug and think, that's just a beautiful rug. I went to her home one day and it was gone. I asked her what happened to it. She said, I burned it. I was thinking, you burned it? Why? Because it represented one of the Hopi gods. And I wanted him out of my house. I wanted him gone. I was thinking in the back of my mind, I didn't know what it represented. If you hadn't told me, you could have just gave it to me like that other guy. But she wanted it gone. Because it represented evil in her mind. It represented evil in her home. And that's what Christ is saying. That's what Isaiah is saying here. He is saying, is there evil there? Is there something that is standing between you and God? Is there a problem that exists between you and God? It needs to be gotten rid of. Whatever that might become, and purify yourselves. Get rid of the evil. That there cease to do evil. Well, we've been going to church. We've been giving sacrifices. We've been doing all the things the law says. But it's the attitude that's behind it. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rebuke the oppressor. Defend the fatherless. Plead for the widow. Do you know James says that true religion, undefiled religion, is doing basically the same thing? To care for the fatherless, the widows, and those that need it. They weren't doing that. You check your history, check what was going on. They were stealing from the widows. They were stealing from the fatherless. They were kicking them out of their homes and then going to church or to the temple about how wonderful they are. But God doesn't believe that they're evil. Come now. Verse 18. Take a look at verse 18. Come now. Let us reason together. Come. Hear what God has to say. The psalmist says this. The Lord has no pleasure in the death of the wicked. God doesn't enjoy judgment. It's there. It will happen. But it's not something that God looks forward to. Even here in Isaiah, he is giving a way out. Come now and let us reason together, says the Lord. Let's talk about this. Let's come to an understanding about this. You're over here doing all these things that I'm tired of. You're over here doing all these things because you think it's okay. And it's not changing your heart. Let's talk about the problem. I have the answer. That's what God says. I have the answer for you. Though your sins are like scarlet, I mean, they just stand out. Red. Red as red can be. They're arrestingly red as you're driving that car down the interstate. picking up all the attention of the police cars. No, they stand out like that. No, they're red like crimson. They shall be white as snow. They shall be as wool. Who can change us? I cannot change myself. I cannot make myself a better person. Cheryl can't change me. She's tried. Only one person, only one who can change us. And that's Jesus Christ. That's God. He's the only one who can change us or change anybody else. And He can change us completely. In Corinthians, he says that we are a new creature. Old things are passed away. All things have become new in Jesus Christ. I like what he says as he goes on in 19 and 20. If you are willing and obedient, you eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword. God gives a choice. It's amazing to me that people hear the choice. It's amazing to me here in Isaiah, they heard the choice. And you know what they chose? They chose to be devoured by the sword. Okay, it seems like a no-brainer of a choice, but so is this choice. Accept Jesus Christ and live and have eternity with God, or have eternity without Him. But he concludes this section with this. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. Excuse me. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. Thus saith the Lord. You can argue with God all you want. People can argue with God all they want. They can go out here and they can say, well, God won't send anybody to hell. And they can go out here and say everybody's going to heaven. They can go out here and they can say all the wonderful things they want to say. They can go out here and say, well, I go to church on Christmas and Easter, so I'm okay. Or they can say, you know, there is no God, or whatever it might be. That's man. But the Lord has spoken. And he says, this is the way. When you take out loans, whose terms do you go by? Yours or the bank's? You're driving down the interstate. Whose rules do you go by? Supposedly yours or the state's. Yeah, if you want to go northbound, you better stay in the northbound lane. If you want to go southbound, you better stay in the southbound lane. It'd be kind of chaotic if everybody just chose what lane they wanted to be in. We do things by other people's standards all the time. God says this is His standard. And nothing is going to change. It's always going to be. I like verse 18. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Come before Him and talk to Him. That's all He asked. That's all Isaiah was saying. Come and meet God on His terms. And that's all we have to do, is meet God on His terms. Let's go ahead and give time. Our Father, as we come to you in the name of Christ, we just ask you to be with us when we come to this time of invitation. Lord, I pray if there's any decision that needs to be made today, that you just lead us and guide us. For we ask this in your name. Mark and Charlotte come. If there's any decision you need to make this morning as we stand and as we sing, we invite you.